Hello, I'm Natalie Bright with the Olathe Chamber of Commerce. This interview is being conducted on behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, comprised of the Chambers of Commerce in both Johnson County and the Kansas City Chamber. Jointly, we host a site, votejoco.com, a nonpartisan site where voters can learn more about candidates for public office. Many of the candidates we will be interviewing have completed candidate questionnaires that can also be found on votejoco.com. We have with us today Chris Lengquist, who is running for election in Senate District 23. The district is located primarily in the city of Olathe, with the north side starting at 127th Street down to the southern tip touching 175th Street, and on the east from Plum to the west side being a bit jagged, with it starting at K7 in the north and following down to Woodland. Thank you, Chris, for joining us today to share with our members and visitors to votejoco.com more about you and what your priorities will be if elected. We want to start today's conversation by spending about 3 or 4 minutes with you telling us a little bit more about yourself and why you chose to run for Senate District 23.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for the introduction. Listen, I chose to vote or to run because I am really looking forward to making a difference in the state. So mental health is a key driver for me. Those that have researched my story will know that I lost a daughter to suicide, and we had adopted her out of the foster care system. And sometimes things happen before the kids ever get a real chance. And so we just believe that we can be a catalyst for change in the way our mental health parity laws are enforced, and basically creating a better system for mental health care in Kansas. And that was my catalyst for running. And yet, a little bit about me. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, St. Luke's Hospital, like so many people in Johnson County in the 1960s. Got out 3 days later, came to Kansas, where I lived, and went to Shawnee Mission West High School, and then on to the University of Kansas, where I met an auburn-haired girl from Baldwin, and we went off to DC for 15 years, and then Tulsa for 3. And then we came back to Olathe in 2004. Over those years, I have been self-employed on and off most of those years. Some really, really successful, some not so much. Some of your business owners might feel the same way about that. And yet, I understand how the numbers work for small businesses, and I understand how government policy can impact the decisions small business owners make. And essentially, we're just looking for stability. We're looking for predictability. We're looking for something that allows us a chance to go out and build our businesses. And so I think I can have a big influence on that as well. I believe in consistent tax policy. I believe in even-handed tax policy. And I believe in tax policy that equally distributes the burden of creating whatever X is that the state government needs, that it just doesn't come from our businesses, or it just doesn't come from our families. And I think there is a balance in there that has been transitioned over the last 10 or 12 years. And I'd like to be a part of making sure that balance gets corrected.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, the next few questions are going to focus on some key business issues that our members have told us are important to them. If you could spend approximately 2 minutes responding to each of these, that will allow us some time at the end for you to make a closing statement.
Okay.
All right, the first one is, what do you see as the top 3 business policy issues facing the state of Kansas in the coming year?
Well, I think one of the biggest policy issues is getting everybody back to work. I mean, what is the right balance between mask ordinances and not mask ordinance? What is the liability that goes on with those ordinances? And if you enforce it at your store, or you don't enforce it in your store, does that increase or decrease the amount of liability? That's a big issue that we need to get cleared up through the legislator. The second issue is looking at fiscal year 2021. I've seen $682 million as the shortfall for our state government, up to $1.5 billion through fiscal year 2022. Listen, that's going to be a huge shortfall. It's going to affect every man, woman, and child and business in Kansas. So I know you asked me for my top 3, but if we can handle those top 2, that's going to be the priorities as far as I'm concerned. We've got to get people back to work. We've got to create our tax base again. And we're going to have to muddle through figuring out what is really important for the next 2 years and what can be deferred.
Well, that's a great segue into my next question. How would you propose to balance the state budget? With specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
Okay, so we're talking about revenue enhancements, and actually one of the things that I'd like to, as far as part of my tax policies, is I'd like to see the grocery tax go away. And so here I am, I'm saying we're 682 million. Now I want to say, let's get rid of the grocery tax. But I believe that every time we put money back in people's pockets, they'll spend that somewhere. So listen, I drive up and down to Emporia all the time, and we clearly have been deferring our highway money for quite a while because there's sections of there that I feel like I'm glad I have a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get over. And yet we're going to have to look at those things again. I was not for amortizing capers into a longer thing, but that was before COVID. With COVID, we might have to look at that re-amortizing our capers obligations in order to get through these next 2 years. But the biggest thing we can do is we can get our businesses back to work, and that will cause the taxes to start going back into the coffers because people will be buying again, they'll be eating again, and those kinds of things. So what's the exact way to go there? I'm a big believer in figuring out what the science is, and then also figuring out what the liabilities are, and then letting business owners make those decisions.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about business owners and their workers. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
So growing and developing the state's workforce to me is just letting the business owners have the predictability of what business is. Listen, I don't know a lot of business owners that are looking to stay flat or decline. Everybody's kind of looking to get, busier and that kind of thing. So if we can when we were going through do we have LLC taxes or do we not have LLC taxes? I never knew what was going on as far as that before I really started getting politically involved. I just wanted predictability into what will allow me to grow my business. What are the regulations that allow me to grow my business? When I look at some of the regulations that are put on businesses, I'm very thankful. I'm in the real estate field. I'm glad that we have people get an education before they go get their business. But why does a cosmetologist have 5 times the education that a real estate agent has to have? That's kind of a question to me. So there are some definitely regulations that maybe we could look at scaling back to allow people to make more money and hire more people. There's other ones that are probably just about right. We have to take a look piece by piece.
Okay, let's talk about education. Can you share with us your views on K through 12 funding?
Yeah, so this can be a very polarizing issue, and I've really been digging into both sides, and I'm actually talking to several different school board members here in Olathe, getting their opinions on these kinds of things. I guess where I come from is frankly as a real estate agent. One of the things that most people live in Olathe for is because of the community and because of the schools. Hands down. When we moved back to the area, we interviewed Shawnee Mission, we interviewed Olathe, we interviewed Blue Valley, and we chose Olathe because of the schools and the services that they offered. Our schools have a direct tie onto how desirable a city is to live in, and that has a direct tie onto the home values, and then those home values have a direct tie into the personal wealth of most homeowners. That'll be their largest asset when it comes to retiring. So I am all for funding our schools to the level that will allow them to create top-notch graduates that will feed our businesses. And I'm also very concerned about the property values and that they keep going up, and that we create wealth for most people. Their house will be their biggest source of wealth, the equity in their house. So to me, school district, listen, I'm also in the rental business. So the better the school district, the higher the rent goes as well. So our schools, they have a big deal on how our property goes.
Excellent. All right, what type of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Again, I am all for business expansion and job growth. I think one of the things we have to figure out here in Kansas is who we are. And one of the unique experiences I've had is living in Washington, D.C. for 15 years. Bringing businesses to Kansas, again, I'm going to go back to my real estate. Nobody wakes up in the East Coast or the West Coast going, gee, I hope one day I get to live in Kansas. I mean, I love this state. This is where I'm from. And yet it's just not the destination that most people want to go to. Yet in real estate, we say they come here kicking and screaming and they leave kicking and screaming. We need to get more guerrilla warfare-ish when it comes to selling what we have. We have a great educated workforce. We have a great reasonable real estate values. We have great reasonable wage rates. We can bring more businesses in to Johnson County. Of that, I'm sure. And especially, I'm going to be representing Olathe, but even some of rural Kansas, when you look at the infrastructure that Emporia has, it could have quite a few more businesses down there. It's amazing to me that more people don't find out about Kansas and the business environment it has here. And what we need to do is just tell our story to increase those businesses that come.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about healthcare. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion in Kansas?
Okay. Well, I was actually quite surprised because it looked like a done deal last year that Medicaid expansion would pass as soon as the We Value Them Both amendment. And then somehow a Republican House, a Republican Senate didn't get it through, which was quite amazing to me. Medicaid expansion, as a business person, if somebody will give me 90 cents for every 10 cents I invest, I'm going to do it every time. So if Medicaid expansion were to go with the Value Them Both amendment, I would definitely vote for it. And I would ask for some sort of a clawback or a sunset, that if the federal government, for whatever reason, decided to renege on their portion, then we would immediately have to sunset it. Insurance is a big deal to our employees here in Johnson County. I mean, I have employees. That's the next thing they want. We have a 401k for our people, and the next thing they want is not higher wages. They actually want insurance. And so we're working through a couple of different providers right now as a small business on how to figure that out. I'm just afraid that if we don't actually figure out this insurance piece, it's going to continue to choke off. I mean, look at the bankruptcies that are because of medical. I mean, again, I rent a lot of properties around Kansas City. We see a lot of credit reports, and it is amazing how many of these credit reports go back to the root issue of they couldn't pay their medical bills.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to talk about tax policy. You touched on a little bit, but can you maybe expound a little bit on what your views are on state tax policy?
Yeah, so over the years, there's been a lot of movement, it looks to me. Like my opponent has voted every time to create better tax environments for businesses, which I understand to a certain degree. Yet as we move forward here, every time that we have eliminated those revenues and the state still needed X, then we've increased the revenues elsewhere. It was my opponent who voted to give businesses the LLC exemption as part of that then back in 2015 was the deciding vote for the highest tax increase in Kansas history. They raised the sales taxes. Meanwhile, the property taxes are going up. So what we've done is we've just changed the burden from some of these businesses to our families. What's fascinating to me is after we took away the LLC loophole, we never gave back the sales tax. We never gave it back. We had some say the highest, some say the second highest. I've even seen the third highest grocery taxes in the country. That makes no sense to me because the highest income people, so they pay a few more dollars on their eggs, their bread, and their milk. But to other folks, it does make a difference. And if we can put those pennies back in their pocket, I think it would go good. I actually lived in Maryland for years and years and years. And their grocery tax was really great. If it was bread, milk, lettuce, tomatoes, no tax. If it's Cheetos, Coke, then there was a tax. So something like that, or get rid of all the grocery taxes, I'd be for that. But essentially, I'm saying businesses aren't necessarily looking for an unfair advantage. They're looking for a level playing field. And I'm just asking for our families through property taxes and sales taxes to have the same sort of opportunities, a level playing field.
Chris, thank you so much. I've got one last question. This is okay. Just really, what would you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
I don't know my opponent very well. We've shaken hands a couple of times. I do believe that there is a leadership style difference. I do believe that I come from a consensus building background. Now, some people look at that as a bad thing. They say I won't stand up for what's important. I will stand up for what's important. I will stand up for families every time when it comes to taxes. I will stand up for families or for small businesses every time. I like to tell people I'll stand up for Main Street over Wall Street any day of the week. Yet I will listen to what's going on. One of the biggest concerns I have as I've been knocking on doors around the district is I thought that taxes might be the biggest issue. And really for a lot of people, it's just the issue of what's going on with our kids, what's going on with our schools, what's going on with the foster care system. After that Kansas City Star thing last fall, people want to know, and they've really connected with the mental health issue because especially in COVID, Natalie, mental health is really showing up important to a lot of people. And I think with me running, it's given a lot of people permission to say, yeah, my son, my daughter, my brother, my father, they've been battling these same sort of things. And we too couldn't find any sort of resources. We can do better in Kansas. We were born out of standing up for the rights of people who didn't have a legal right to stand up for themselves. We can do that again. We can fight for the people who can't fight for themselves. And we can do this in a compassionate manner, and yet we can do it in a manner that makes sense for our businesses and our families. That's what I would say. I think we just have a little bit of a different leadership style and a big difference in the vision of what Kansas can be.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. I have an opportunity for you to do maybe 3 or 4 minutes on a closing. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about that we didn't touch on, this is your opportunity to do that.
Okay. Well, I didn't come prepared with a 3 or 4 minute talk about why I'm the greatest thing on earth. I would just say this. Our current senator has been in the legislature since 2004. He's been in the Senate since 2011. I've been working. I've been running businesses. I've been helping families find homes, both rental and buying. I've been sitting at kitchen tables for the last years that he's been in office. And what I would say is this: there comes a time, we're in a new decade. Maybe it's time for new ideas, new leadership. I don't think anybody was meant to go to Topeka for 20 years or 16 years. I don't think anybody was meant to go to Washington for that matter for 16 or 20 years. Let's get some new ideas going. I trust that he has the experience to go up there and show up. I also trust that maybe some new ideas is going to make a difference.
Well, Chris, again, thank you on behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council. We appreciate your participation in this candidate interview. I do just want to remind all the voters who are watching this video to go to votejoco.com for all of your candidate election information. Advanced voting begins on July 15th, and advanced voting in person begins July 20th. Primary election day is August 4th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Have a great day.
Thank you, Natalie.